So I watched Dark Side of the Ring Season 5's second episode on Buff Bagwell, Marcus Bagwell. And they did have him, and he looks good after everything he's gone through. He is still currently recovering and stuff from all the substance abuse and injuries and stuff he's gone through. And, you know, he does have the determination to want to get back in the ring. And you got to realize that if he was like 30, 31, when WCW went out of business, and now you're looking, you know, at, what is it, like 23 years later, he's about 54, and he still has the drive to get back in the ring. Obviously, if he's going to do it, everybody agrees he could. And they're cheering for him. They're rooting for him to try to do it. Whether that's with AEW, if he gets that chance, you know, TNA, or maybe even WWE to right the wrongs of, you know, two decades ago, then we'll have to see. But he's taking it step by step. They got a lot of people to talk to on this one. They got Slick Johnson, who grew up with Marcus, knew Marcus before, you know, he became a referee. They got Missy Hyatt, which when you look at her, I guarantee you people are going to look at her and be like, what the hell happened to Missy? You know, because, yeah, you look at her and you're like, you know, it's night and day compared to what you saw the last, it's basically night and day from the last time you saw her. You know, completely different person, it feels like. And you can definitely tell maybe she had some work done, if not a lot of work, but my goodness. You know, I mean, when I saw her, I'm like, Missy? This is Missy Hyatt? You know, and yep, it was. They got her. Like I said, they got Slick Johnson. They got Scotty Riggs, Scotty Anton, if you will. They got Marcus's dad. They got two out of the three ex-wives of Marcus, Tanya and Judy. So they had plenty of talking heads here, and it was really interesting how they went throughout, you know, his entire career, how he got into the business and such. They talk about, you know, the fact that his family was very well known in the Marietta, Georgia area, and how they had, how his mom, basically, well, his family owned a lumber yard, a major lumber yard, and that's how a lot of people knew him, because they would buy the lumber from there. And he mentioned basically that some people would notice that Judy, his mom, was the person that was initially in charge, basically the boss of the lumber yard, and that some people that would go in there and do business with them would, you know, kind of not take her seriously because, you know, she was a woman. But then they soon found out, according to Marcus, about 2 minutes later, they would find out, oh, shoot, you know, yeah, she is the boss for a reason. You don't F with her. And it's pretty much a fact. They talked about his early lifestyle, how he was an all athlete and everything with football and such. Again, they mentioned the family was well off, very well off, you know, financially. You know, his father was a stock car driver, you know, for the NAHR, or NAHA, I think that's what it was, stock car driver. They got him and all that, you know, for this, like I said. And they went over the early ways he started out and everything, and how basically, you know, his father, and I think his mom, but mostly his father, spoiled him and his brothers. They didn't get his brothers for this, which was a surprise, but they, you know, like I said, they got his father. But, you know, his father would spoil them and all that. But, you know, despite that, they would still discipline them. Like, if you did wrong, you got a talking to, or you got a whooping, and, you know, they still treating them regularly, even though at times they'd be like, here, you know, here's his keys, Marcus, to a new car and everything, Corvette, if you will. And he'd even give them bags of cocaine, say, hey, go out and enjoy yourselves to stay out of trouble. Which was like, whoa. It was like, whoa, okay. You're giving a guy that's like 17, 18 years old, you know, just fresh out of high school, if you will, you're giving him and Slick Johnson and the rest of their friends bags of cocaine and say, go enjoy yourself, stay out of trouble. It's like, okay, whatever. You know, so they did a decent job going over the early portion of his life and everything. they do talk about some of the troubles that took place at home because, with any family business, where you're raking in money, you're getting some money, being financially stable and thinking, hey, you got this lumber business and then you got the stock car driving career on the side, that you're going to be fine. You'll be stable. You can retire comfortably. But they find out that that's not the case, and that basically they were running out of money. They had gone into bankruptcy, and Judy was going to banks to get some loans for the business, saying that basically stating, hey, I can pay you back with this, when in fact she couldn't. And they lost the business. They didn't lose the house, but they lost the business. And I think they lost the business, because they had to file for bankruptcy. And it was like they were just going broke. They were going broke, is what they were. And it got to a point that Judy and her husband Steve would argue and everything. And they showed a reenactment of Marcus defending his mom with a gun, against his dad, because they were arguing. It got to the point that Judy was leaving the house. She was going to leave in Steve's car, and he's like, no, you don't. You're not leaving in my car. And she's calling for Mark to come help her, and he comes down, brings a gun out with him, and, his dad's like, what are you going to do with that gun? Shoot me? And he's like, I don't want to. He says, I don't want to if I have to, but I will if I have to. He's basically telling him, look, I don't want to do that, but if I have to defend mom, I will. So, Steve then goes out. His dad goes in the house. They follow him into the house. He goes right for his gun, at the, on top of the fridge, and he starts taunting Marcus, saying, okay, come on, big boy, come on, big guy. And Marcus, he's like, look, put the gun down. You're going to get one of us killed, and you're going to end up in prison, or somebody's going to end up in prison. He's still taunting him, and I guess he was going to pull the trigger or something. And Marcus, he just, in retaliation, shot off some bullets, if you will, got him in the hand, to the point that they, when he was in the hospital, he had to get some bone from his hip to replace the bones broken, shattered in his hand, and get a little steel plate in there, if you will. And because of that incident, Marcus and his dad didn't talk for about 3 or 4 months. And when they did, his dad admitted, hey, it was my fault. You were in the right. I wasn't, basically his dad admitted his fault for what he did. I wasn't in the right for what I did, for what I caused, and so on. And they basically said that, his dad was overall a good guy. He wasn't, that loud or angry or anything, unless he lost a game of poker. And they do a reenactment where, if he lost a game of poker, he would pound down on the table. And Slick Johnson said he was there at Marcus's house one time when that happened, and they hear him saying, God damn it, that being Marcus's dad. And then apparently he went and got a machine gun, a revolver, if you will. I wouldn't say a revolver, but a machine gun. Literally a machine gun, like one of those ones, if you will. So he grabs that, and he goes outside, and he goes out to to where his pond is outside the house, and starts shooting geese with it. He starts mowing down some geese with this thing, and Marcus is like, "What the hell is going on?" So he grabs his gun to go outside and see what's happening, and Slick, I think, follows, and what they're seeing is just, his dad mowing down with his machine gun all these geese, and you see nothing but feathers flying in the reenactment, because they said, that's what they said. They said basically you see, feathers flying in there and everything. So anyway, that was before the whole situation with them going, broke and losing the business, not doing so well financially, and the whole, Marcus defending his mom situation against his dad. Marcus then moves out, marries his high school sweetheart, Tanya, and they go live in a place called Proper Place Apartments, or Proper Place Apartments. I can't think of the name right now. And this is where they met Missy Hyatt. And Tanya met Missy. And Missy, who was working for WCW at that time, I think was just starting out herself, if you will. Well, actually not starting out. She was with WCW for a while, except for a brief period when she was in WWF. But still, she was with them for most of her career. And she sees Marcus working, on the car. And she's just like, oh, my God, who's this good-looking guy? And, they got talking, and he's like, well, and he brings up, Marcus that is, that his brother wants to be a wrestler. And Missy's like, your brother? Well, why don't you be a wrestler? You got the look. And Marcus is like, nah, guys don't make that much. But then Missy reveals to him that the lowest paid wrestler gets about $100,000 a year or something like that, $100,000 a month. And he's like, what? Excuse me? And that got him to consider getting into the business. He got trained by Steve the Brawler Lawler. They had footage of some of his, that being Marcus, if you will, they had footage of some of his independent matches, as himself, as the Handsome Stranger in GWF, that's Global Wrestling Federation. And then, of course, they have him come up to WCW, and basically prove himself as a singles competitor before getting paired up with Too Cold Scorpio in their tag team managed by Teddy Long, and where they won the tag titles. Too Cold admits that he was kind of surprised, that Marcus could keep up with him because he was a high flyer. Marcus was more like finesse, muscle, if you will. And Missy even said she was surprised at how quick Marcus had, really taken to the sport, taken to being an in-ring competitor. So like I said, they talked about pairing him up with Too Cold, if you will. But it's during this time that Marcus ended up cheating on Tanya, because you had girls flinging themselves at Marcus to the point that he ended up cheating on Tanya, and she ended up leaving him. And it was around the time when this happened that he got paired up with the Patriot as Stars and Stripes. And he won tag team titles with them. Oh, with Patriot, of course. They won tag team titles with the Patriot. And then they revealed that he wanted to get calf implants to, in his calves, to kind of make himself look a little bigger. And he did, but unfortunately his body didn't respond very well. And he was living, because he was divorced from Tanya, he was living with Slick Johnson, and Slick apparently told the story that he would have to pick Marcus up over on his back, carry him on his back, over to the bathroom, sit him down the toilet so Marcus could take a shit, or a piss, if you will, and then, clean himself up, and then, Slick Johnson would come back in, pick him up again, and bring him back to the living room, sit him back down, and everything. And, he said he would get some headaches, seizures. And it just got to a point to where they had to remove the calves, because if not, he wouldn't, be able to, I guess, continue his wrestling career unless he took a lot of pain pills, which, eventually later on in his career he did. But you get the idea. He had to get them removed. And he said, and Marcus is like, well, is there a way I could keep them? And they're like, yeah, but we'd have to cut your legs off. So Marcus is thinking, like, how can I keep these without losing my legs? And basically they had to, like I said, remove them from his body. They had to remove him from his legs, and he had to heal up from that. It was around the time that when he got back into the ring, they paired him back up. They paired him up in another tag team, this being with Scotty Riggs as the American Males. And they had Scotty Riggs on there, and mentioning that, talking about that. They even both kind of sang the song a little bit, the American Males song, and showed the vignettes that they were using at the time to build up the team. And then they have Eric Bischoff on there, and Bischoff's like, I wish he wouldn't have reminded me of the American Males. Now I'm going to have that song in my head until tomorrow morning. And, Eric basically talked about the reason for them being together, both having, unique bodies and everything, very muscular bodies, attractive looks and everything for the, that the ladies go, gaga for. And just like with his other partners, they showed them winning the tag team titles and everything. And then they mentioned about how he ended up with the NWO. They mentioned, that he had the opportunity, and that it was Kevin Nash that went up to him and said, hey, how would you like to be in the NWO? And they show the episode where Marcus, and Scotty go down to the ring, and Marcus turns on Scotty, and Marcus mentions, well, I don't want to have to do a talk with Scotty and everything and ask if I should be in the NWO. Of course I want to be in the NWO. It's the hardest thing going. And Scotty's, he mentions that, after, he mentions as, they're going to the ring, like, yeah, we'll do this. We'll find a way to make this work for you while being a tag team. And I guess they kind of mention, because they do have a moment in there where they say something to each other, and I think that something is, okay, turn around, I'm going to neck breaker you. I'm going to hit you with a neck breaker, and that will split up the team. I'm assuming that's what happened, but yeah, they did kind of talk about it like on the way to the ring and everything, like, okay, we can make this work for you and all that. And after that, the rest is history because of Marcus taking the jump, he becomes Buff Bagwell. And basically Tanya and Marcus ended up with one of his wives, Erica. They didn't interview her. They did interview his other wife, Judy, at that time. As well, they interviewed her, but Tanya mentioned that when she saw Marcus become Buff, become part of the NWO, she's like, yeah, any chance of him and her getting back together pretty much went out the window with that, because what the Buff persona allowed Marcus to do was embrace, more of like who he was, but 100 times over. So they talk about that. They go over what happened with him in the ring. They go over with what happened with him in the ring and everything. And especially his injury that happened on Thunder. It was a match with Lex Luger and Rick Steiner against him and Scott, I believe. And he ended up, of course, injuring his neck, breaking his neck legitimately, just breaking his neck. And the way it was described to him by the doctor, because he mentions that when he's lying in the hospital, it's like 3 hours of CAT scans, MRIs, and all that. The doctor basically comes up to him, goes into his room and says, hey, get up, sit up a little bit. And Marcus sits up, and he's like, the way he describes it is like, well, I couldn't move before, but now I can. What's going on? And basically, the doctor tells him that when you snapped your neck, or not snapped, broke his neck, if you will, that basically on initial impact, his spinal cord got bruised to the point that it caused his body to just, react into a paralyzed state. Basically, his body just said, okay, I'm not moving, you're not moving, this is not right. And then again, that's how he found out he broke his neck. They showed him coming back coming back to WCW with his mom pushing him in the wheelchair and everything. And that's how we got our first introduction, I should say, to Judy, his mom, Judy Bagwell. They talk about that. They talk about how he was back in WCW 3 months after breaking his neck, and then 3 months turned to 10, and it was during this time when he was making his comeback, he became the manager of Scott Steiner, a.k.a. his tag partner as well. And yeah, it went from there. And they mentioned during this that with Judy coming on board, they started to basically bring her, more into the forefront, more as a on-screen character. They show her being a tag champ. They mention how Rick Steiner really loved her, not in that manner, but loved her as a friend, really got along with her. And then, like I said, showed her as a tag champion, showed beginnings of a tag match with her and Rick against Scott and Buff. And after that, they have her. Of course, they show footage of her on the forklift from New Blood Rising, and Marcus brings up the fact that how Judy, really became part of this. It was Rick Steiner's idea to bring her in, and Rick suggested, why not bring her in as the doting mom that's not happy with you after what she's done for you, and everything. Like, why, ask the question of like, why are you being so bad to these people? Why are you being bad and all that? And they show footage of, and Marcus is like. And Marcus basically says that, yeah, let's do it. And they show footage of her talking to him and slapping him, in the face and everything because of the way he's acting, and everything. So they talk about that. They go over that. They mentioned that, and they mentioned that Judy actually came up with the idea once he really started to really embraced the Buff Bagwell side of him because his family meant a lot to him and he wanted to help his family out. She's the one that suggested, well, why not make a corporation out of this or make a company out of this, a business, if you will. And he's like, okay. And they called it Real Buff Inc. And he basically employed his entire family. He paid them a decent salary. But the way it came off, though, according to people like Slick Johnson, was just like, yeah, you people are weird. Because what he did is he would pay his family to help him out, like wash his clothes, take him to the airport if he needed to be taken there, pay his bills if those needed to be paid, and just all kinds of odds and ends, if you will. But he would pay them. He would say, okay, you did that for me, here you go. He would pay them a decent salary, even to the point that he would pay his mom to help him out. And I'm not talking, any of the other stuff. I'm talking help him out by cleaning him up, if you will. And Slick Johnson goes over the story where he comes, because I guess him and Marcus were still living together or something. So he goes over the story where he walks up to Marcus's room, and he walks into Marcus's room and looks into the bathroom, because Marcus's bathroom is huge. He's got like this big tub in there or something, and Marcus is just leaning over, and Marcus has his penis, if you will, bent between his testicles, and his mom is shaving the hair off his testicles, and it's like, you're watching that part and you're like, what in God's name? And basically, according to Slick Johnson, the way they reacted was, just flat out normal. Like, oh, hey, man, how you doing? And, oh, hey, Mark, because that's Slick Johnson's real name. Hey, Mark, how's it going? How's everything? And Mark's like, oh, no, I'm good. I'll just be leaving now. You people are sick, or you people are weird. So, yeah, that was pretty much... one of the craziest stories you would hear. And then, of course, they talk about WWE buying WCW, and Marcus, being one of the names that got picked up temporarily, apparently. But this is what they also talked about too. It was the day of it was the day of that infamous Raw from Tacoma, Washington, where they basically had WCW main event, between on Raw, that is. They had the WCW main event between Marcus and Booker T. And they go over what happened before that, hours before, where the guys are going over things, rehearsing. And what happened is Marcus has this confrontation in the ring, I guess rehearsing or training, with Shane Helms, the Hurricane. And Shane Helms just is mouthing off about him, being, drug addict and all that. And Marcus is like, look, man, we could drop this right now, or I can knock your teeth down your throat. And Shane, dared him to do something, and Marcus just basically went back and boom, gave Shane the Bagwell slap, which is something that the father taught them in, to utilize in a show of dominance or something like that, or, basically saying, hey, I'm not going to take any BS from you. And Marcus decides to walk away, and then that's when Shane Helms grabs a frozen bottle water and cracks it right over the back of Marcus's head, and it causes him to bleed. But instead of telling anybody, Marcus goes and gets his own doctor to fix it, to staple him up, stitch him up. And then Marcus basically said that, he had to find a pen, he had to find a black marker to basically color in the area where he had the stitches, he had the staples put in, because he didn't want anybody to question, what happened? Why is there a big gash there or something? And he went to wrestle that night against Booker T. Now, they did mention how people were reacting, about the match being bad, and Marcus is like, what are people talking about? What bad match? I've been doing this, for a short time. I'm 31, I'm 31 years old with almost like 20 years of experience in me. What's the deal? What bad match? So I have a bad match. So what? I'm Buff Bagwell. I'm a 5-time World Tag Team Champ. What's the issue? What's the issue and everything? because even he doesn't get, why their match was called bad and everything, but, obviously, but some do. Like Scotty said, yeah, that match wasn't good. And the reason for that they didn't go over here was they did it in front of a crowd. And Marcus has gone on record himself and said this, that they did it in front of a crowd that wasn't a, true to home WCW crowd. They did it in front of a pro WWE crowd, but not a pro WCW crowd, which they could have done in Atlanta. And even Marcus is like, yeah, if they would have waited to Atlanta, been a different story. Anyway, they mentioned, they basically mentioned that. They mentioned how Marcus basically mentions that he was told, okay, man, we got plans for you. Just come back to next week. You're good to go. And then that's when he gets fired. And Slick Johnson, is pretty much confident. Well, I wouldn't say confident, but Slick Johnson pretty much believes that if Marcus had not slapped Shane first, and Shane would have done something, that Shane would have been gone, fired, and not Marcus. That's how he looks at it. So basically, they go over what Marcus did post WWF, WCW, him being in the short-lived XWF, him doing some stints in WWA, World Wrestling All-Stars. And then, of course, they go over what happened to him outside. Him getting, addicted to stuff, addicted to pills, somnias, and everything, especially because of the neck injury that he suffered in WCW. And of course, they mention him having his first accident where pretty much he gets messed up. He gets pretty much messed up. They show a picture of him in the hospital. His wife, Judy, because he was married to her at the time, you can see her getting emotional, remembering that and everything. And she mentions that he got back up from that pretty quickly. Like he recovered a lot quicker than some people would, Well, basically, she mentions in her own way that he recovered quickly from that in a manner that nobody would think would be possible. But that's how he is. That's how he is, and of course that led to more like addictions and everything. Slick Johnson even mentioned that when they were on a plane to Europe, which I guess was part of a European tour, Marcus would, sleep next to him on there, but he would also like kind of twitch a little bit, and you'd have a stewardess ask, is he okay? And Johnson would be like, oh yeah, that's just his medicine kicking in and everything. That's just his medicine. And so yeah, they went over that. Like I said, they went over him basically going into his first accident and all that. And then they mentioned after he bounced back from that, still recovering, that, he still financially needed to find a way to support himself and Judy, his wife Judy. And he got an offer to appear on the Showtime, I think it was a Showtime production called Gigolos. He got that opportunity. And he's thinking, okay, and his wife's thinking, okay, he's just going to go over there. Both of them are thinking this, like, okay, he's going to appear on there. He's going to get paid $25,000, for an appearance or for the time he's there as a mentor, not realizing that they're going to want him to do a lot more than that. And again, remember, this is after his first accident. So he calls up Judy and tells her, yeah, I've got some bad news. What they're going to have me do is equivalent to soft porn. And she was not, and you could tell just by her remembering that, being like, she was devastated. She was like, no, tell me I did not just hear that. And unfortunately, that's what she heard. That's what she heard. And so what happens is Marcus does what he has to do, because he wants to pay bills, help to keep his roof over his head, the roof over him and his wife's head. And what happens is basically when he gets to doing the scene, he basically states he has no blood in his, penis, if you will. But then he finds out after the shooting's done, he finds out at a bar talking to the guy that's paying him, because he's apologizing, man, saying, look, man, I'm sorry I couldn't get it on with this girl, the way you wanted me to. And the producer's like, you're not supposed to get it on with her in that manner, if you know what I mean. And Marcus is like, what, are you kidding? It's like, what, excuse me? Because apparently they didn't explain to him that, yeah, you're not supposed to really bang the woman that you're, getting intimate with, or that you are seemingly getting intimate with. You're only supposed to make it look like you are. It's a reality TV show, but what you're doing is not real. You doing the deed is not you really doing the deed. So anyway, basically he ended up, and he was still married to his third wife, Judy, at the time. He ended up basically, on this website called Cowboys and Angels. I think that's what it's called. I think it was called Cowboy and Angels, or Cowboys for Angels, or something like that. And it's basically the website equivalent of Gigolos. It's a Gigolo website. And he finds out you get paid $10,000 to $25,000, for whatever you got to do. Whether it's just go on a date, spend a weekend or a whole week with whoever is willing to pay money for you to do this. And unfortunately, what happens is the first person he does this with, he ends up falling for her. He ends up falling for the first girl he does this with. And Judy was, his wife Judy was not too thrilled with this, but she was willing to tolerate it, anytime he'd get a call for a date. And it just got to the point that because of their schedules being so different, with her working sometimes, and not seeing him and so on and so forth, it just got to the point that while she was at work sometimes, one day I should say, he calls her up and says, I think I've fallen in love with this girl and I'm going to leave. Which, obviously is not the best time to let your wife know, I got to end this marriage of ours right now, because I got to end we have to end our marriage because this ain't working anymore, especially with what's going on with me and what just happened. So that wasn't a good look. He says, now he does say that basically if he could do it over with Judy again, he would, but he won't, because he doesn't want to go down that path again. So yeah, that happened. And then, of course, they talk about the second accident he has. He basically drives this car, straight into the wall of a mall, into the bus station in a mall. He gets injured a little bit. He's thankful that nobody got hurt themselves, but he does get arrested for that. And basically, that's like the first, I'm assuming, wake-up call, not the full wake-up call, but close to it. And it isn't until they talk about his mom getting Alzheimer's, dementia, if you will, being diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia, that turned out to be the real wake-up call for him. Because his dad, ironically, was in the hospital too at the same time, and his dad was on the phone with her, on the phone with Judy, trying to wake her up because she slipped into basically a coma because of this, which she never woke up from, because of the Alzheimer's. And Marcus is like, and Marcus is like, you're seeing this power and Marcus describes the fact that he's witnessing, him and his family are witnessing this powerful woman, going down in flames. And, going down the way she was. And, of course, Judy Bagwell, his mom, passed away from it and everything. You could tell that the father, he didn't get too emotional, but you could tell he was emotional a bit about Judy and about his wife, Judy, Marcus's mom. And basically said she's the best thing that's ever happened to him. One of the best things, one of the most wonderful people that ever happened to him. And he states that was the wake-up call. That was the legit wake-up call for Marcus to realize, hey, you need to straighten yourself out, save yourself, if you will. So what happened is his niece tells him, you could stay with me and my family, but you got to get sober. You got to get yourself cleaned up. So they contact Dallas Page, who of course has been known to help people out like Marcus. With his DDP yoga and so on. And they have footage of DDP talking with Marcus and everything. So they brought him in, and everything turned out all right in the end. Everything turned out right in the end. And then they talk about Scotty Riggs. They actually dedicate the last 5 minutes of the show to Scotty. And Marcus said, Dark Side of the Ring contacted me, said they were going to do my story. They're going to talk to a lot of people, including Scotty. And he's like, you know what? Speaking of Scotty, I'll give him a call. He's like, I haven't talked to him for a bit. I owe him a call to see how he's doing. And Scotty Riggs basically says he was living in his car at that time for at least 2 months, in the last 7 to 8 weeks. And that he had gotten because he was trying his best to save, his house. His mother had just passed and everything. And he was trying his best to pay bills, to keep his house, which he couldn't, and so on. And he said it just got to a point that it got so depressed that, he was just a day or so away from basically taking his own life, taking a gun, putting it to his chest and taking his own life, until Marcus called him up, and said, hey, man, I'm at Dallas Page's place. You need to get up here right now. And Marcus kept, pushing him to do it, and finally Scotty did it. And he looks better. He looks good. I mean, he was at Sting's retirement at Revolution. We saw that. So, yeah, he's doing good. So he's doing good now. And you see, they show photos of them together, I think, at conventions and everything. So, yeah, in the end, it turned out all right. And it's basically a positive message that, you can basically sober yourself up. You can clean yourself up from the actions of the past. Basically, bounce back from what put you down the path, that nearly took you out for good. So yeah, overall it's a great episode, and if you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend watching it, especially if you grew up with Marcus Bagwell and Buff Bagwell and WCW and so on. Now, next week, they talk about Terry Gordy. They got Jim Cornette for that one. It's going to be really interesting. I think they got Terry's son as well, but it's going to be about Terry Gordy. And like I said, they got Jim Cornette for that one. They got Terry Gordy's son and a few others. So that's going to be an interesting watch as well. But anyway, though, guys, that's just my review, my take on Dark Side of the Ring, episode 2 for season 5 on Buff Bagwell, which is entitled Buff and the Bagwells. Again, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section here on YouTube and Rumble, as well as if you're listening at podcasting for Spotify on Spotify. Also, let me know what your thoughts are in the live chat if you're listening on YouTube as well. But until next time, guys, that is all I'm going to say, and I'm out.